It's time for Atomic Monsoon with your hosts, Jedi Stephanie.
Guess who's number one now?
Josh.
I did not watch a single season of The Bachelor. Why is my who saying I want to watch The Bachelor?
And Psycho Andy.
My hands are only wet because I watched them. There's no other reason for that.
And now, it's Atomic Monsoon.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, Stephanie.
So, you know when you told me the other day that we should talk about the best of both worlds?
Yeah, the season 3 finale and season 4 opener of Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a few moments in a conversation with my husband to realize you were not talking about the theme song to Hannah Montana.
No, I was not.
You know
In
what
fact,
I did?
I'm gonna say, other than this conversation right now, I have never talked about the theme song to Hannah Montana. But you know what songs I do talk about?
The ones by Def M Records that introduce Atomic Monsoon.
That's absolutely correct.
Yay!
Yes, check out our friends at Def M Records at defmrecords.bandcamp.com. That's DEAFMRECORDS. And support the guys that help make our theme music.
And welcome to Atomic Monsoon, guys.
Oh yeah, that's this show.
Yes, it is. So yeah, you guys have figured out we're going to be talking about Star Trek Next Generation, specifically those episodes titled The Best of Both Worlds.
And speaking of the best of both worlds, we have the best of both worlds at your house on the line today.
Indeed we do. After so many times of mentioning him on the show, we have finally got him to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, my husband, Connor.
Permission to beam aboard.
Granted. Make it so. Engage. Energize.
All of the above, right?
Yeah,
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Stephanie mentioned that you have watched all of the Star Treks or close to all of the Star Treks, and that you would be a good, knowledgeable guest to have on. And I thought, well, you know what? I've suggested literally every other guest we've had on. So
Fair enough.
Sure.
Well, glad to be here.
Thanks for coming on, man. So, yeah, Stephanie, you guys were I guess rewatching Next Gen, and Stephanie was watching it for the first time.
Yes.
And you know, we have done a couple of things where we'll talk about an entire season of a show, and I was like, man, that's not a bad idea. Except the thing about Star Trek is that the entire season is like 26 movies, and we did that once in our Marvel Cinematic Universe episode.
Oh boy.
But boy, yeah, that was rough. I mean, it came out fine. Like, I think that episode's still one of our more fun episodes, but
Still one of my
Like
favorites.
10 seconds for each movie.
yeah, basically. And so I thought, you know, rather than, and like, I didn't really want to rewatch the first season of Next Gen. Like, I don't think that the first season is as terrible as its reputation, you know, but
It's difficult. It's a little bit of a slog, that's for sure.
there are some episodes that I just don't necessarily care to talk about. And I thought, okay, what about, is there one episode that stands out? And I thought, oh yes, of course there is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best of both worlds. It's right in the title. It's the best. It's the best one.
It is the best one. Yeah.
Plus, I mean, on Atomic Monsoon, we've talked about Transformers, we've talked about video games, serial, Star Wars, you name it, we've probably talked about it. But we haven't talked about the other big name in sci-fi, which is Star Trek.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I know we've mentioned Star Trek at some point there, but yeah, we haven't really gotten into it. I was a kid when Next Generation started, and my dad was a fan of the original Star Trek, so of course we watched Next Gen.
Sure.
I remember watching the episode where Tasha Yar dies, like, live, or I mean, as live as television is. And I remember thinking it was weird that, like, oh, this TV show killed a main character. This is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, especially for a character that was established like she was and so well liked, at least
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so fandom was a little bit different in 1987, 1988 when the show started, because we didn't really have the internet. Like, there were some very early message boards and Usenet groups, but 99% of the population plus was not online discussing, their shared fandoms.
Sure.
So it's hard to say, like, truthfully what the vibe was at the time, but I remember for myself being a elementary school aged kid thinking, oh, they just killed Lieutenant Yar. What? But that episode set the stakes for this episode a couple years later. And I think we should let's get into a brief summary of it, I guess, and then we'll talk about some of the finer details. And I promise we will not do 75% of the episode as summary this time.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool.
So, Steph, why don't you guys start us off, and then with part 1, and then I'll do part 2, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So, pardon everyone. Please forgive me if I do not explain this well. Connor, you may need to jump in if I do not explain this well. But
we should definitely. This is Stephanie's first time through watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. So, hey, we know that there's some super fans out there. We know there's people who have watched every episode a million times. This is Stephanie's first try. So,
cut me
she's
some slack.
yeah.
She's
jumping on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In every sense of that phrase.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
So, from what I recall, the episode starts with the Enterprise, manned by Captain Picard and his crew, and they head to, I don't remember the name of the planet, but they're going there for some like distress call, or they're going there to pick up a crew, if I recall correctly. That includes...
You actually got it with the distress call. That's it.
Oh, okay, it was a distress call. Okay. So they go there for a distress call. God, I'm really trying hard to put the pieces together. So they go there for the distress call. They go to answer it, and while there, they meet up with, I believe, a general and a new commander. Correct?
Pretty close, yeah. Admiral Hansen and Lieutenant Commander Shelby.
Yeah.
So they get to the planet, and they're supposed to be at like a village, and it's not there. There's just a crater.
Yes,
and
I remember that part.
Then we cut to the theme song, and we come back, and Admiral Hansen and Lieutenant Commander Shelby are on board the Enterprise, speaking with Picard and Riker.
That's right.
Trying to figure out what the hell happened.
That's right, because they're trying to figure out what happened to the town, and why there's just nobody there, no survivors. And the Admiral mentions to Picard about the fact of why hasn't Riker taken on a ship of his own, a command of his own. And Picard's like, I don't know. And he mentions that Shelby is a good candidate for stepping in as his potential next first officer. And there's this whole thing through both episodes between Riker and Shelby where they're just kind of butting heads with each other. Because Riker's like, no, I am the first officer here. You're just a lieutenant commander. And she's like, yeah, but I'm coming for your job.
You left out an important detail of this conversation.
Yes, please point it out.
Admiral Hansen thinks that the reason the colony disappeared is because of the Borg.
Yes, I was getting to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just establishing that whole
got it
thing between those two, because it is kind of a big thing with the set of episodes. But so the Borg, who we saw episodes before when Q decided to throw them like millions of light years away from Earth and everything in the central galaxy that they travel through, and said, yeah, here's the Borg. They're going to be a threat later, and pretty much flash forward to now, the Borg has now caught up with them, and has pretty much just destroyed this whole town. And
And I think maybe a more appropriate synopsis of that, at least, not necessarily destroyed, but they assimilated the town, which is arguably a lot more terrifying than just simply destroying it.
Fair, thank you. So they think it's the Borg, and they decide to investigate further to see if it actually is. And then, pretty much while they're investigating, the Borg show up.
Yeah.
And they demand Picard to beam aboard and not exactly negotiate with them, but pretty much just says, lower your shields, don't fire at us, give us Picard, we want to talk. And they pretty much take Picard and
not even we want to talk, it's just give us Picard.
Yeah,
we're gonna blow you up.
End of discussion, right?
Yeah. So they give him Picard, and
no, they don't give him Picard.
They don't. That's right.
The Borg just allow themselves onto the Enterprise. And,
that's right.
And take Picard.
Yeah, that's right. They fight.
There's not even a fight. There's not even a discussion. I think the Enterprise crew maybe disables one of the Borg, but he ends up being transported off anyways, and they take Picard as a result of that brief encounter.
Yeah, I think Riker kills one. The next one shows up. He tries to kill it. That one throws him. Worf tries to stop him. He gets thrown, and then Picard gets taken.
Right.
Because I just remember people going flying, so...
And so, here's the thing about Next Generation. A threat is a total badass when they knock down Worf.
Yep.
Yes. I've come to learn that to be the case.
Yeah. It's a thing that they do a lot in that show. Because
Worf does get thrown around a bit.
Worf might get beat up the most out of anyone on the crew, but he's also like the biggest, most badass member of the crew. So an easy way to establish, like, hey, this thing is for real is beat up Worf.
Yeah, throw Worf around a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So they take Picard, and then they pretty much... I don't know the best way to describe it, but they pretty much use their Borg technology, and they take over Picard's mind.
Yeah, they assimilate him.
And they pretty much implant him and just say, yeah, no, you're going to be our representative in the Federation and everything.
For the assimilation of the Federation and all of Earth, effectively.
Yeah. And then it pretty much ends with Picard calling the Enterprise, telling them about this, and the Enterprise is just going like, what?
Locutus of Borg tells the Enterprise to then prepare for assimilation.
Yeah.
That's right.
You also missed that Shelby and Geordi and the crew were coming up with a plan to use the Enterprise's deflector dish.
That's right.
To fire a giant blast to potentially destroy the Borg ship.
Yeah.
Which is important because that's like literally the episode ends with, I am Locutus of Borg, prepare to be assimilated, and Riker saying, Mr. Worf, fire.
Fire the deflector dish. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. Hey, look, you got to give me credit that I remembered as much as I did.
Oh yeah, it was
for sure.
Great. Yeah,
for sure. So here's the thing about before we get into the summary of part 2, I want to point out episode 1 aired June 18th, 1990. Part 2, the beginning of season 4, aired September 24th, 1990. You had to wait 3 months and a day because it was the end of a season and the start of the next season. So literally the show ends with the Enterprise telling with the interim captain of the Enterprise telling his crew to fire on Picard.
Yep. I mean, I can imagine it's like the, how you would have experienced episode 5 of Star Wars heading into 6. I mean, what,
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I have to wait. Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, first of all, Next Gen this is the second 2-parter ever in Star Trek. After, is it the Menagerie in original series?
Menagerie,
so,
part 1, 2, yep.
Yeah. So, like, Star Trek didn't do 2-parters often. No. Like, they saved it. This is also only the second appearance of the Borg. It's the first time we see someone get assimilated. Like, we're seeing how scary and threatening they are. They go onto the Borg ship, and it looks like an H.R. Giger painting come to life. Except everything's technological instead of aliens and genitals. Yeah, and like, boom, here we go. And then it ends fire, and then it's like, okay, next week reruns.
Yep.
Okay. So it's never been confirmed or denied, but over that summer, it was believed that Patrick Stewart's contract had come up, and he was in negotiations about whether or not to sign back with the show. So there was a very real possibility that the show was going, like season 4 was going to begin with Riker as the captain and Shelby as first officer.
Crazy.
Oh my god, that would have been so different.
Yeah. So jumping forward to September, the episode opens with the deflector dish being blasted. The blast coming out, being fired at the Borg ship. Mm-hmm. And it has no effect. And Riker mused, there's no way that the Borg could have adapted for the attack that quickly. One of the things about the Borg that we forgot to mention is that they adapt to any sort of a physical attack very quickly. So they're constantly having to retune their phasers to different frequencies so that the Borg have to they can get in a couple of shots before the Borg adapt to it. So this is a brand new weapon that they've never used before, and the Borg have already adapted to it. How? I don't know. Oh, turns out Locutus reveals that all of the knowledge and experience of Picard is now part of the Borg collective, and that has prepared them for any eventuality that he would know about.
Oh, jeez.
Mm-hmm.
And then the theme song happens. So then the Borg cube starts heading towards Earth. The Enterprise can't pursue because it needs repairs based on all of the attacks and the amount of energy that they've used pursuing the Borg up to this point. On a teleconference call with all the senior officers, Admiral Hansen says that they've got 40 Starfleet ships waiting to intercept the Borg. Additionally, the Klingons are sending some warships, and they've even considered opening communications with the Romulans, who are just straight up their enemies.
Yep.
So Hansen says, there's no way that Picard would willingly assist the Borg. So we need to consider him to be a casualty of war and just dead. Mm-hmm. He then promotes Riker to captain of the Enterprise, and exactly nobody is happy about that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Back on the Borg cube, we see Locutus being further assimilated and having more stuff added to him. And we see, as a needle is injected to him, Picard sheds a tear. Back on the Enterprise, the crew is repairing everything. The Borg have made contact with Starfleet, the Starfleet Armada that was waiting for them. And that battle did not go well, unless you're the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
In another senior officers meeting, Riker informs that for the time being, at least, Lieutenant Commander Shelby will be first officer of the Enterprise because of her experience with the Borg. They need that right now, and it's not a good time to change up everyone else's positions. They discuss some possible tactics for survival or defeating the Borg, but there's no obvious answers. Riker goes into the captain's quarters, and then Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg, shows up, and she says that a lot of people in the ship's bar 10 forward are expecting to die. And she explains that when a man is convinced he's going to die tomorrow, he'll probably find a way to make that happen. The only one who could turn this around is you. And, says, hey, this sucks. If they had killed Picard, this whole thing would be a lot easier, but they didn't. They took him away from us piece by piece and turned him against us. And you have to let Picard go. The Enterprise arrives at the remnants of the battle scene, and all that remains of that battle are burnt out husks of various starships, including the Melbourne, which was the ship that Riker at the beginning of Part 1 had turned down so that he could stay on the Enterprise. So kind of a nice, nice isn't the right word, but kind of a hey, Riker was...
This is where you belong, right?
Yeah, Riker made the right choice because if he had made another choice, he would have been dead or assimilated. Mm-hmm. So Riker comes up with a scheme that involves Shelby's plan of separating the saucer section from the star drive section of the battleship of the Enterprise. And he's counting on the Borg knowing of this plan because they had mentioned it with Picard before he was abducted. Riker contacts Locutus to discuss terms of surrender. Locutus responds by saying that a meeting is unnecessary and eventually everyone will be assimilated anyways. They continue on with the plan. The Enterprise separates, and the plan plays out exactly as he expected Picard would respond. Data and Worf take a shuttlecraft over to the Borg cube. They board it, knock out a few Borg with modified phasers, and Worf wrestles with the Locutus. Data injects something into his neck. I didn't catch exactly what that was. And the three of them were transported back onto the shuttlecraft and then to the Enterprise while the Borg are destroying the shuttlecraft. So the Starfleet now has Locutus on the Enterprise. The Borg ship flees, continuing its path towards Earth. The Enterprise recombines. Dr. Crusher attempts to revive Picard and separate him and Locutus, but they can't. And then there's a there's a quick clip that the YouTuber Linkara, who reviews old bad comic books, he's basically the angry video game nerd for comic books. He uses, anytime there's like annoying technobabble, he uses this clip of Data in his episodes with the phrase, "Using multimodal reflecting sorting, I have been able to detect a complex series of subspace signals between Locutus and the Borg ship." And he just kind of keeps going on. Anyways, it was kind of fun to see, like, oh, this is the episode where that comes from. Great. Eventually, Dr. Crusher and Data are able to create a neural link between Data and Locutus to gain access to the Borg hive mind. Data breaks through, but is unable to override commands due to security protocols. However, Picard breaks free for just a moment and says the word sleep. Crusher thinks that Picard is talking about how exhausted he is, but Data says, no, it's not. He's not talking about his physical state. He's giving me a command. So Data suggests that all the Borg effectively go to sleep. They all head back to their regeneration state. A Commander Shelby-led away team goes to investigate the Borg cube, and yep, they're all plugged in and sleeping. But something, and this was a bunch of technobabble, so pardon me, but like something about that command caused a weird feedback loop amongst the Borg. So Riker gets the away team back onto the Enterprise and commands the Enterprise away. The cube ends up self-destructing, and Picard is released from the Borg hive mind. And when they ask him what he remembers, he says everything. The episode ends with Shelby being assigned to the task force to help rebuild Starfleet. Riker stays on as first officer of the Enterprise, and Picard has the Borg implants and augmentations removed, but he's left pretty traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
There
you go. Jeez, yeah.
So one thing I found really interesting when I was doing some research for this is that the word locutus is a Latin word for the phrase "he who has spoken." Which is kind of perfect for that character, especially when you consider that the Borg's naming convention is always otherwise like 3 of 5 or 7 of 9 or 2 of 12 or whatever. And it was like, oh, why did Picard get a different name? It was like, oh, because it means the thing that he is going to be is the spokesperson for the Borg with humans. So, yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah. So what'd you think?
So, well, what's interesting is that when we talked about potentially doing this episode talking about Star Trek, specifically Next Gen in these episodes, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Obviously, you said this is the most famous set of episodes from Next Gen, meaning I've probably seen memes of it. I've probably seen it somewhere. And oddly enough, as we're watching the episode and I'm seeing, Picard covered in, the Borg implants and everything, I suddenly go, oh yeah, no, I've seen, not clips, but I've seen photos from this before. Just didn't realize it was these episodes. I actually low-key thought it was the series finale.
Fair enough, yeah.
Because it seems very series finale-ish in the way that it flowed.
It certainly does.
Yep. But yeah, no, those are really good episodes. I definitely enjoyed them. Oddly enough, when the first episode ended and it had the dun 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 dun, theme and everything saying to be continued, I immediately thought of the Family Guy episode where they used that exact thing, except after it finished
to
going
extreme effect.
Yeah, except after it said to be continued, it immediately went right now. So it was short-lived because it was supposed to be a joke, but it was just the thing where I'm sitting here going like, oh, when I have to almost like reverse a Family Guy reference where it's like I see it in Family Guy and then I see the original and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. It's in my research for all of this, I found that the Seth MacFarlane Company actually tried to license that song so that they could use it in that Family Guy gag.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, they couldn't come to terms with Paramount over it. And so they actually got the composer to write a sound-alike song to his own song.
Variation. Funny.
So, yeah.
I think what's most curious about this episode, Stephanie mentioned it here as well, that this is actually, as most Star Trek nerds will know, this is the second time we've actually encountered the Borg. But something that happened in this episode that made them a lot more of a threat, I would say, is the fact the first time we saw them, they were all about, kind of more, I don't know, I guess a colder approach to, they wanted to, assimilate technology. We see them for the most part ignoring the Enterprise for the vast majority of that early episode. And in here there was a bit of a character focus where, instead of just assimilating technology, they actually wanted to assimilate the people, and I think obviously that's one of the strong suits of Next Generation is obviously the characterization, but this focus on, how humanity at its core is, focused on exploration and, being curious. And that's that portion of Picard that's really terrifying that they obviously take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Star Trek, I mean, at least the original series and Next Gen, and I would say Deep Space Nine it's very, like, hey, we kind of figured out Earth, like we got everything working there. The opening line, the thing is space, the final frontier, right? So it's, hey, we figured out everything that we've got, so let's go explore more.
I mean, I think in one of the first few episodes where you really get a sense as to, what Next Generation is the Picard says it at one point, where humans once unburdened from material need are, finally able to devote themselves to the higher pursuits, knowledge, justice, mutual understanding. And it's exactly that the Borg seem to be intent on taking advantage of.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are very much about taking everything. Yeah, man, the Borg are terrifying, right? Because like eventually they're just gonna win.
Right.
Like I haven't seen every Borg episode if every iteration of Star Trek, I don't believe, but I don't know how Starfleet will ever completely defeat the Borg. Because no matter what you do to them, there's just more of them connected somehow, right? And like even it's not clear, but I was under the assumption that this Borg ship was not necessarily the same one that we saw in the episode Q Who when they first appear. And since this one has blown up, like this one blows up, like we know there are more Borg ships out there,
right?
So they're just out there assimilating, taking technology, assimilating different species and races into the Borg collective. And I mean, right? Like how do you stop that? Right? They are the singularity.
Every new culture and species, they become exponentially more prepared for the next culture and the next species that they may come across. Yeah.
Right.
Really terrifying.
Yeah. And there's a moment in the following episode because in the research everyone was like, oh, it's kind of a trilogy, and after watching I was like, I mean, there's like 5 minutes in this other episode that really deal with what Picard was going through, and they're not even consecutive. But there's a moment where he's speaking with his brother and he says, I should have been able to stop them, but they took away everything that I was, and I was watching them do it and I couldn't stop it. And it's even more terrifying. I mean, hey, it's Halloween season, right? So yeah, this is a terrifying thought, but like, hey, you're there and someone's using your body to do something against your will. Like,
I mean, the implication there is that the Borg still somehow allow you to keep some sense of self through all of this, and even though that wasn't clear while Picard was Locutus, it definitely seemed evidence once he was not Locutus that, like you said, he was there through all of that watching, but couldn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Stuff.
So, Andy, I know you mentioned this to me when we had discussed this idea of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned to me that this is an episode where Riker is out of character, or at least seems out of character, or something about Riker's character choices in these episodes.
I didn't say that. No.
No, you didn't say that?
No.
Who was I talking to? Connor, was it you?
I don't think so. I actually rather like this episode because it, in my opinion, it kind of doubles down on why Riker is important to the series. He kind of goes against the everything that he's being told and all of the suggestions from everyone else. He truly does act as a captain in this scenario, to save Picard, and rightly so. If the implication is that eventually the Borg will win, Riker's thought process is, well, let's take away the one thing that is giving them this infinite edge, if you will, over the Federation, and that's Picard. If we take away Picard, maybe we have a chance to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I don't know who I was talking to then, because someone told me something about his character choices in those episodes specifically, and I was like, okay, whatever. And because Riker, as I've been watching the series, Riker has become like my favorite character.
Sure. That's
Have I become that predictable?
No, he's very much just the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the series.
Okay. The Obi-Wan with a little bit of Moroku, with a little bit of... Okay, yeah, no, that tracks.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, like, I have thoroughly enjoyed Riker as a character, so I don't know where I heard someone say that, and so it threw me off. I had to get clarification while we were thinking about it.
It is. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched the first few seasons all the way through, but I do think that this is the first time that we really see Riker rather step up and take charge. He is a little bit more lighthearted. He's a little bit more playboyish, maybe. Yes. And this is the first time that really he has to
be serious.
You're in charge. Yeah.
And in fact, I think any good indication of that is when he wants to lead that away team in the in the second episode. He's prepared to go and to do what he normally does, and the temporary lieutenant commander has to remind him, hey, you're the captain now. That's my job to go on board.
Yeah. She starts to say something. He's like, well, I'm in charge, and Deanna Troi is like, yeah, you're in charge. You need to stay here.
Stay. Yeah.
Which I'm curious, what was your guys' opinions of Shelby?
I think that she was written exactly as she needed to be written for this episode.
For this, yes.
One of the things about Next Gen that's interesting is they I think Dr. Pulaski is a good example of this. Every time they introduce a new person, it's always adversarial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when they first introduced Pulaski, she can't pronounce Data's name correctly.
Data.
Everyone's she straight up calls him Data.
I know, I cringed.
yeah, and there is kind of a sense through the first couple episodes she's on, it's like, you're not Dr. Crusher, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And as time goes on, it's sort of like, oh no, Dr. Pulaski, okay, yeah, she's part of the gang, that's fine, this is okay. And I feel like had Shelby continued on as part of the series, it is these episodes do very much start with, hey, Riker, I'm coming for your job. I want to be first officer of the Enterprise. And I mean, she gets it.
Yeah, she does.
She absolutely gets to become first officer of the Enterprise, and does a damn good job of it. But she is, she's introduced as, hey, this guy you've been watching for 3 seasons, I'm coming to steal his job from him. Mm-hmm. And that's not cool. That's not that, if someone came into work, into your job and started saying like, "Hey, I'm coming for your job," you're gonna be like, "Hey, get out of here! Like, what's the matter with you?" You know.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say that Shelby was not the right person to be the first officer of the Enterprise. And to your point, Connor, Riker's whole thing is like, yeah, he should. I mean, by all rights, Riker should be the captain of a ship at this point. Especially after seeing the way that he handles this situation, right? Like, okay, yeah, if something happened to Picard, Riker would be a great captain. But also, and I don't know, like I've been in positions where like when I used to work for Blockbuster Video, I was offered assistant manager position a few times at the store I was at. And I was like, you know what? Like, I am perfectly happy just being a regular retail clerk. I am not like, I show up, I do a good job. I do a better job than, some of the other people that work here. But like that level of responsibility is not where my head's at right now. Had I continued on with Blockbuster for a longer period of time, eventually I probably would have taken an assistant manager job, and eventually probably would have taken a store manager job. But
then again, we run into that same thing that we alluded to it here as well. Of had Riker taken that position as if you had
right.
Blockbuster doesn't exist now, and neither did the Melbourne. So
right, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just going to say that. Right. So it's hard to say that Riker isn't making the right choices for himself because hey, he's still alive.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the entire rest of the are now part of the Borg.
Yeah.
So that's terrible. Actually, no, they're not, because they would have been on that cube which exploded. So
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's what's. I think that's what they don't really address it that much in Family, except like you said for those those key 5 minutes that are interspersed throughout the episode. But
right,
the truly terrifying thing is that Picard had to either kill or assimilate a large portion of the Federation fleet that was stationed, I believe, outside of Earth. And he has to live with that now.
Right. It was Wolf
359? Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a real star. It is actually the nearest star to Sol, the Earth's sun, like in real life. So that was a good place for them to have a standoff with the Borg, because like, hey, it's close, so we can all get there, but far enough away that like Earth will still be safe, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I like it.
I will admit, for my first watch through of just Star Trek, the Next Gen in general, because my viewings and experiences with Star Trek were primarily the original series and the the J.J. Abrams movies.
Oh, sure.
The JJ verse. Yeah.
The JJ verse. Yeah. And I really enjoyed the old Star Trek because it was amusing watching the campy old fighting and the poor kind of quality that they had to work with in the time and everything like that. But I loved Spock and I loved Kirk and I loved McCoy and all those characters like that. And when the 2009, JJ verse came out, I thoroughly loved those movies. Like, Chris Pine is fantastic as James T. Kirk. And, Spock is great. And it's just, I thoroughly have loved those characters, but everyone I've talked to has always said Next Gen is the best. You need to watch Next Gen. You need to experience Picard and Data and Worf. And those were the only three names that I hear from the show. But now that I've sat and watched some of it, I admit I actually did really like this a lot, and I see where shows like Orville that Seth MacFarlane created got a lot of influence from.
Oh, Orville is absolutely a love letter to Next Generation.
It is.
Like, I haven't watched a ton of it, but I've watched about half the first season, and it felt like I was just watching Next Gen with different characters.
Yeah,
which is a good, like, that's Next Gen's been off the air since 1993, 94. So to get more of that 20 years later, like
Mhm.
20 something years later, like, hey, he nailed it.
Yeah, he did.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the world's biggest Seth MacFarlane fan. So so to watch some episodes of the Orville and be like, oh no, this is Star Trek. Okay, he did it.
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of just surprised because when they hear Seth MacFarlane, they think Family Guy, they think
Right.
Ted, they think A Million Ways to Die in the West, they think the crude humor that he is known for, when in fact, the man created Orville, which is a fantastic sci-fi series for the modern day.
Yeah.
And he also is a fan. Like, if you've ever heard him sing like classical jazz music, like he'll blow your socks off with how just like faint, like how smooth his voice is.
Interesting. I have not heard him sing, but
Yeah, no, just like hear him just sing any Frank Sinatra song or something, and you're like, wow, like why are we not talking about this, people? But yeah, no, just Orville was really, really good, and we really enjoyed it. I'm still waiting for the next season to come out. I know you are too, Connor, because we watched it together.
Mhm.
But watching that, then watching Star Trek, I can definitely see where the love letter, like moments are, and I definitely see why a lot of people do like Next Gen. I admit I haven't watched every episode because I know Connor has gone ahead without me a few times. But admittedly, now I have the energy that I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go back and actually watch the episodes I missed. Sure.
yeah.
So.
And I would say, this is. I read some things about this, and I do kind of have vague recollection of it. This, the best of both, where Next Gen stopped being where it became the new Star. Like, this is Star Trek now.
Okay.
Like the first couple seasons were very much like, oh, it's okay, but it's it's not Kirk and Spock and Bones and everything. But like, this was sort of the point where it's like, no, it's not that show. It's a thing, and this is Next Generation is my new master. Like it. This was the point where it really solidified itself, and I think that from this point on, it was this. I mean, first few seasons are fine, but season 4 is really where it picks up and is like, nope, this is it now. Like, let's go. They found their footing. They figured out who everyone in the cast was. The cast all figured out how to work together. All the growing pains were done, and they could just focus on making good shows. And they succeeded for the next few years. So, at least in my opinion.
I think the only other departure I might have from that is the season 2 episode, I believe, Measure of a Man, with where the trial for Data's sentience is essentially on the docket. Yeah. And I'd say that's among the one of the best as well, because it certainly delivers some very memorable lines of dialogue, and I think one of the beauties of Next Generation is that it it addresses those hot topics. Is Data alive? Does he have sentience?
Yeah, and that has a stellar performance from Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of really good episodes. I know a lot of people said the first season or 2 is a little hard to get through, but there were a lot of episodes that I was a little blown away by. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. People don't think this is that good, or is this one of those episodes that people enjoyed and I missed the other ones?
I would say at least with season 1, there's less of it in season 2, but with season 1, it's not that the whole season is bad, it's that the batting average is lower.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's more episodes that are just okay or are not quite as good than there are great episodes. And as the show goes on, there are more and more great episodes.
And I think it's understandable as well, because we have, it's hard to think of it like this, but there's only 3 seasons of the original series, and when you spend an entire season, 22 or 23 episodes, whatever it was, of the Next Generation kind of stumbling along, of course people are going to be like, all right, this isn't quite, what I had expected it, and it's certainly not the original series. So what's going on?
Well, and it's 20 years later, right? So, I mean, think about anything, it's 2020 when we're recording this, right? Everything that we grew up with has been rebooted. But think about, the original Star Trek was the original Star Trek, and that's all that there. I mean, a couple of the movies, but like all there was the original Star Trek for 20 years, right? We got 3 seasons, 65 episodes of it, 66 episodes, something like right. There's 3 seasons, and that's it, and then nothing until the Star Trek the Motion Picture in was it 81 that came out? Maybe 79? I don't know. It was off the success of Star Wars for sure. But because Paramount was like, "Oh, we have one of those. We can
do that too."
Yeah. Maybe it was 79 and then Wrath of Khan was 81. I don't remember exactly. I wasn't expecting to talk about this. But yeah, so like we got a couple of the movies and then Next Generation, and so like of course Next Generation is going to be compared to the original one because that's all that there was, right? It's the same thing with the Star Wars prequels and now the sequel trilogy, right? Like yeah, everyone's always going to compare them to the first 3 because that's all that there was for 20 years.
Yep.
So yeah, like every iteration of Transformers, right, is always compared to the original because okay, Stephanie, you haven't watched all the episodes yet, but so far, you said everything with Ninja Turtles, everything with Thundercats, right, everything with Teen Titans. Connor, who is your favorite character in the next gen? Because it's a bad show, but because it's not the show they wanted it to be.
I think without a doubt, Picard.
Next gen was very much the same thing until it proved itself.
You know, and I know that's probably what most people think as well.
Sure.
You know, I think what's one of the things that they did really well in Next Generation is we're given this kind of future utopia, you know, and I think what makes Riker obviously a little bit different is that he's a little bit more of a throwback to the original series. He's very much more, you know, Kirk than Picard certainly is. And I think what's interesting about Next Generation is, you know, they take arguably the most compelling character that people would like to see as captain, and that's Spock, and do exactly that and make him the captain.
I agree.
You know, and Picard is very much that, you know, emotionless, even-keeled, kind of Spock-like personality, you know, where everything is kind of reviewed with this cold logic. Obviously, he's not a Vulcan, but he certainly does treat most situations certainly like that. And it obviously is interesting to see, you know, when he breaks away from that and, you know, does something daring, and that's part of the beauty of Picard and obviously Next Generation.
Yeah, I agree.
I also really like. I'm just going to say this. I like Data. Data is very amusing and very fun, and I wish that I'd done a little more research on him for when I did She Kills, because that would have been great for Calliope. But I also really like Wesley. So I like Wesley Crusher.
Okay.
Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
I think he's cool.
Yeah, I think the hate for Wesley mostly comes from the first season, where Wesley is very much the wunderkind, and you know, he solves all the problems in the first season, and eventually it's like, all right, like we get it, the kid's smart. Can anyone else do anything now, please? And I think the fact that they keep writing him off and back onto the show is kind of evidence of like the fan base is split on him, you know, and. I don't think Wesley Crusher is a bad character at all, but I do think that the first season definitely had a lot of Wesley centric episodes that maybe exceeded the number that they needed to have.
Sure.
I think I personally thought that they did. They gave him a very fitting kind of character arc. I mean, obviously you can't really, you know, live down the Wunderkid. You know, kind of vibe that they give him in the first season, and obviously, you know, among a ship of the galaxies and the Federation's brightest and most talented people, you're right. He does save the ship quite a bit more than you would think.
Yeah,
you know, but they kind of double down on that as well with, you know, with him meeting up with the Traveler again towards the in the final season. You know, and Wesley resigning his commission and going with the Traveler to explore all the other planes of reality, if you will.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry.
Oops. Spoiler for a show that ended 25 years ago.
Yeah. But so Andy, what about you? Who's a character you like?
Oh, Geordie LaForge.
Yeah.
Jordy's excellent. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Jordy's great.
I love Jordy is so good at what he does, and he never believes he's as good as he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always struggling with his disability, right? Like, even though his vision is actually better than human vision with his visor, he still would trade all of that back in a moment's notice to be able to just be a regular guy again. And I think that's a very interesting dichotomy for a character. But I also really like Data. You know, Riker. I didn't like Riker much as a kid, but as I get older, he's grown on me a lot more. But yeah, like, I don't know. Geordi's also, I remember watching an episode of Reading Rainbow when I was a kid where they did a behind the scenes on Next Gen because, you know, LeVar Burton was the host of Reading Rainbow and plays Geordi LaForge. So they were like, yeah, instead of talking about books, like, let's just give this special behind the scenes, like, DVD feature before DVDs, like, just a Reading Rainbow about Star Trek. And it was awesome. And,
I'm sitting here having an existential crisis because I just now put those two together. I watched so much Reading Rainbow as a kid, and I'm now putting that together. Oh my god!
It's because of the visor.
It's the visor and the suit. That's definitely what's giving it away.
Yeah. Also, he had a goatee most of the time during Reading Rainbow, so
that's true. He was older, so
yeah. No, it was the same time. They were on at the same time.
Oh my god! Oh god! Malfunction.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Anyways, overall, 2 thumbs up for me. How about you guys?
I would most definitely agree. Yeah.
Loved it. It's great.
Great. Okay, and with that, we are just about out of time. Connor, is there anywhere on the internet you want people finding you, following you, social media, projects you're involved in, anything?
Not a whole lot. You know, I would say for most of that, if you keep up with Stephanie, you'll probably find me close by as well.
I mean, we could all. I mean, I know we both have our own personal Instagrams. Of course, mine's not public anymore, and there's reasons for that. But I know yours was public for a while there, just because you know, you went viral with your 7-foot tall moving Walkman.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess if you ever want to find both me or Connor, there's Syndicate Saver United on Facebook, guys. Check us out there. Also check out Syndicate Saver. But also check out Atomic Monsoon.
Yes, yeah, you can find Atomic Monsoon on where are we? Twitter and Facebook as Atomic Monsoon, and with the underscore between the words on Instagram, because Instagram's weird. You can email us at atomicmonsoon@gmail.com if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, corrections, anything that starts with a K sound. Cake recipes, I'll take those too, you know.
Yes.
You can find some shirts and masks at our Redbubble store, and support our friends at Def M Records.
Yep.
Did I forget anything? Oh, find all of our past episodes at atomicmonsoon.com or your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you're finding it on, you know, iTunes or Google Play or whatever, please leave us a nice review and rate and subscribe to us so you don't miss an episode.
I was just about to say that. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for joining us here. And
thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you for coming on, for coming on.
Yeah, of course. I guess I'll go ahead and leave you two to wrap this up. But I just want to say peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Very good. Very good.
Transform and roll out.
Right.
Warp 9, engage.
Yeah.